Hi everyone, good morning. So today we are going to start with LOS 1C, uh, chapter rates and return. Subject is quantitative methods. Uh, so LOS 1C is about money weighted and time weighted rates of return. So we will start with money weighted rate of return. And before we start with money weighted rate of return, you need to understand what does internal rate of return means. So internal rate of return is the discount rate that makes the net present value of an investment equal to zero. And it is internal because it depends only on the cash flows of the investment and no external data is needed for this. In simpler terms, in simple words, internal rate of return is let's assume that you have invested 100 rupees and at after 1 year you receive 110 rupees or $110. If the internal rate of return is 10%, this means if I discount this 110 to the initial time times zero, so this is going to be 100. So the difference in between these two numbers is going to be zero. So this is what internal rate of return means, that the discount rate that makes the net present value of an investment equal to zero. So the net present value of this 100 is like actually equal to the initial cash inflow. So this means the net present value is actually zero. So yeah, let's assume that it was 120 and if I discount it at a 10% rate. So roughly it would be somewhat around 100 and let's assume 105. So at this rate of 10%, the net present value would be the difference between the inflow and the outflow. The inflow of the money at time zero and the net present value. So difference was $5. So this is what uh, so this is more than internal rate of return. So we will prefer these kind of investments where we are able to generate more than our internal required rate of return. So this is the basic definition of internal rate of return in layman's. So internal rate of return is a single number which represents the return generated by an investment. And okay, let's consider an example here. So let's consider an example. Let's say that you invested $100. This is the cash outflow at time zero. Then the cash inflow at time one is $110. Internal rate of return, the required rate of return is 10%. So how does it looks like when we solve it? $100 is equal to 110 divided by 1 plus R to the power 1. And here the R, the rate is 10%. So 1.1 to the power 1. If this is equal to, if 100 is equal to 100 after solving everything, this is our internal rate of return. So the net present value of the cash inflow is zero. This exact calculation can be done using our calculator also. So this will save us a great deal of time. And the CFA exam is actually a multi-choice question, multiple choice question based exams. And we will be having time constraints when we appear for the exam. So this, the the example we just discussed, that's also I have mentioned in how it works section. So money weighted rate of okay. Now let's understand, since we have understood the internal rate of return. Now let's discuss about money weighted rate of return. So money weighted rate of return is it's actually defined as the internal rate of return on a portfolio, taking into account all cash inflows and outflows. The beginning value of the account is an inflow, as all the deposits in the account, and all the withdrawals from the account are outflows, as are the ending values. Or it could be either way around also. So basically, what it means to say is all the outflows should be negative and all the inflows should be positive. Or you can also consider all the outflows as positive and all the inflows as negative, but do not mix these numbers. Do not mix up those values. I hope if you have understood internal rate of return, now let's start with money weighted rate of return. Just an example, and it will be more clear to you. I mean, how do we solve? How do we? What do we mean by money weighted rate of return? So here is this example where at time zero, an investor has bought a share for $20, and at the so let me just represent it in a better way. This is time. The first column is representing time. The second column is representing net flow, and that's in an inflow. And this is the net cash flow, net cash flow. So at time zero, we have invested $20 and there is no other investment. So $20 we have invested. Investor buys $20. At the end of year one, he receives a dividend of $50. Point 50 cents means point 0.5 cents, $0.5. So at the end of year one, he receives a point 0.5 cent dividend. This is the dividend. And buy purchases another share for $22.5. So he also purchases $22.5, one more share for $22.5. This means if I look at the total net cash flow, this means there was a cash outflow of $22.5, but there was a cash inflow of $0.5. So this means the cash outflow was of only $22. At the end of year two, now let's move forward in the question. At the end of year two, he sells both shares for $23.5 after receiving dividend of $0.5 each. So there is no cash outflow, but for the year two, there was a cash inflow. He has sold his stocks for 23.5. So two stocks, now he has two shares. One share here, one share he bought here. First share he bought here, and second share he bought here. So now he has two shares, 23.5 into 2, and dividend for from two shares is 2. So this is $1, and this sums up to be say $47. So total cash, net cash flow is positive, and he has now $48. So the cash flow CF0, cash flow at time zero is minus $20. Cash flow at time one is minus $22. And cash flow at time two is $48. Now we are going to use our calculator and see how we can use our calculator to calculate these numbers. Let me just clear everything. Okay. So here in our calculator, we have a function CF. Always, always clean your calculator first, press second, and clean work. To access these functions, see clear work, memory, format, reset, date, icon, view, profit, depreciation, break even, data, stats, and bonds. You actually need to press on the second function, and then the second function means the function, this key will be used as one or the date. Just like our laptops have function keys, the to use our function, the To use our function keys, we actually have a special key in our laptops to press. We press that function key, and then we can access any key F1, F2, F3, and just like this. And this is our function key second, and we can access the above functions. So I will press second and clear my word. And this way, every other calculation which I have previously performed, it gets cleared. This refresh function is not available in your calculator. So this is just because it's an it's an online calculator, so it refreshes everything, it cleans everything. So okay, so we are going to use the cash flow function. The cash flow function, we are going to enter the cash outflow. The first cash outflow was $20. So $20 it was negative. So I'm going to press this function. So this negative and this minus and this positive negative, there is a difference. This is an operational function. This has more of an operational function. This actually has more of a sign function, sign based function. I want to put a sign here that it's a cash outflow. So I will press negative and then I will press enter here. So I will plug in the number and then I will command uh, uh, I will give the command to the calculator to enter this, punch this number. Then I will press downward arrow. Then the cash flow at time one, the cash flow at time one is 22, and I'm going to again press negative, and then I'm going to enter. The cash flow, this represents frequency. We will discuss about frequency later on when we will uh, do calculations, more complex calculations. So now CF2. At the end of year two, we had $48 inflow. And now we have plugged in all our cash flows in the calculator. Now we are going to press the internal rate of return function, internal rate of return key. We'll click on internal rate of return and we will ask our calculator, we'll command our calculator, compute the internal rate of return, and this will give us an internal rate of return of 9.39. I hope this is clear. So 9.39 is our money weighted rate of return. So if we look at this cash flow, this example from a money weighted rate of return perspective, the the rate of return is 9.39%. Let's do one more example on money weighted rate of return. So for better clarity. Now assume an investor buys a share of stock for $100 at time zero, and at the end of year one, she buys an additional share for $120. This means there is a purchase, so there is a cash outflow of $100 at time one, bought share one, bought one share. At the end of time two, she has bought one more share. And at the end of time three, she has sold the share for 130 each. So this means 130 into 2. Now she has bought one more share here. So now she has one more share. So now total she is going to sell both the shares for 130, and this is going to give her $260. Now one more thing, proceeds from stocks. Here, she actually has a proceeds from stocks. She has gained $2 dividend here, which is a cash inflow, and the total cash outflow here is 118 only in time one. If I calculate these two for time period one, and here we have two shares, so there is going to be $4 extra. So sum total is going to be 264. Now understand this thing. Cash outflow at time zero is $100. Cash outflow at one is $118, and cash flow at time two is $264, which is a positive cash inflow. And again, I'm going to use my calculator. I will plug in these numbers and see what does what is the internal rate of return. So I'm going to press onto my cash flow function. I'm going to clean this again. Second, clear work. So my initial cash flow is $100. I'm going to press negative sign, enter. My cash flow at one is 118, 120 outflow plus $2 of dividend, and cash flow at time two is 264. I'm going to enter this number and I'm going to press the internal rate of return. I'm going to ask it to compute the internal rate of return. So internal rate of return is 13.86 now. So internal rate of return is 13.86%. Or internal rate of return is 13.86%. And since we have used the calculator function here, if we were to do it manually, so understand how do we do it manually? Uh, this is a cash outflow of $100. There is a cash outflow of $118 at time one. The initial $100 and the time at time one it's 118. So I'm going to divide it by R, and this should okay. Let me just make it a little more clear. And the cash outflow is 100 and 118. This is a cash outflow. The cash inflow is 264 at time two. This is time two, this is time one, and this is time zero. The cash outflow, I'm going to compound it using the rate, and I'm going to discount it using the rate. I'm going to discount it using the rate again, but the time factor is 2 here. This is the time factor is 1, and here the time factor is 0. If I plug in 13.86 into these rates, if I plug in 13.86 here, and if I plug in 13.86 here, so both of these calculations are going to be equal. So this is what internal rate of return means. And this is what money weighted rate of return represents. And the intuition here is that we deposit $100 in the account at time zero, then added 118 to the account at time one, which where we also have $2 dividend, funded the purchase of one more share at 120 and ended up with a total value of 264. So this is the money weighted rate of return. We have seen in how we can do it manually, and we have also seen how we can do this same calculation in our calculator function also. Okay, I hope this much is clear. Now let's move to time weighted rate of return. And time weighted rate of return is actually it's little different from money weighted rate of return, and it's also the concept is little tricky. 9.39. When we calculated this example, the same example using time money weighted rate of return, the answer was 9.39. Let me just write it somewhere here. 9.39%. When we talk about the time weighted rate of return, so the time weighted rate of return is uh, it's actually it's not way too much, but the method, the way it's calculated is different from money weighted rate of return. But even though both of these are a measure of return only, So time weighted rate of return measures the compounded growth rate, and compounded growth rate over a specific performance horizon. And the process of calculating the time weighted rate of return, we first break down the overall periods into sub periods based on dates of the cash inflow and outflow. Then we calculate the holding period return uh, for time zero, for time one, and for time two. We are going to calculate at the end and at the starting, beginning at the end of the period, at the beginning of the end, beginning at the end of the period, and beginning at the end of the period again. So this is how the time weighted rate of return actually works. So we calculate the holding period return on the portfolio for each sub period, and then we link the compounded holding period returns to obtain an annual rate of return. If the investment is for more than a year, we take a geometric mean of the annual returns to obtain the time weighted rate of return. So let's try this thing in an example. So what we are going to do is we are going to break this thing. Uh, Understand at time zero, at time one, and time two. When we talk about the first share, so first share was bought for $20. Understand? And there was a dividend received for $50, $0.5. Then another share was purchased at time one, 22.5, and both of those were sold at time two for $23.5. The dividend of 50 cents was also received here. So both of these were sold. Dividend of 50 cent was also received here. One dividend of 50 cent was received here. So at time zero, $20, the value of the portfolio at the end of time one, before we purchased a new share, this is going to be, so this is the beginning of the period and end of the period. So when we talk about the time weighted rate of return, we are going to, rather than this is, okay, money, let me just write time here. Time weighted rate of return. We are doing solving the same example for time weighted rate of return. So at the end of 1 year, this $20 is now 20.5 because there is dividend. So original plus dividend is included in here. But okay, by mistake, this $20 is now $22.5 because of capital appreciation, and now there is 0.50 cent added to it. So now this the share one is now worth $23. 22.5 plus 5. So this is the value of share one at time one. Because the dividend is received at the end of the time one. So this we are going to add here. Now we are going to talk about the second share at time one. So a new share was bought at time one, 22.5, 22.5. If we look at these two values, the total amount we have invested here is $45, and a dividend is received for 50 cents at the end of the time one also. So we are going to plug in these numbers in our, we are going to use these numbers in our calculation. This 22.5 is now 45, and this 22.5, here we have $45. This $20 is now $23. And at the end of the time, this is what our total investment look like. This 23.5 into 2 is going to be 48. 47 plus 1, $47 plus $1 from two stocks, $1. Now we need to calculate the holding period returns for each year. So portfolio value starts at 20 and ends up at 23. So this means the holding period return is 15%. Holding period return is going to be 15% here. It starts from 20. So holding period return, how do we calculate the holding period return here? So this is going to be 23 minus 20 divided by 20. The holding period formula, if you remember, 3 by 20. The holding period return for time 0 to time 1 is going to be 15%. Here the holding period return is 15%. From time 1 to time 2, the holding period return is going to be 45 to 48. So 48 minus 45 upon 45, the holding period return 3 by 45. Let me just quickly calculate this thing. 3 divided by 45 is going to give me an holding period return of 6% now. 0.067% maybe. So this is my 15% and this is my 0.67%. The holding period return, time weighted rate of return. To calculate this calculation, uh, we are going to use the geometric mean now. 1 plus 0.15 be multiplied by 1 plus 0.067 minus 1 square root. So this is going to give me uh, a holding p. Okay, let me just calculate it here only. 1.15, 1.067 minus 1 under root. Let's use our calculator. So 1.15 multiply by 1.067. This is equal to 1.23. Now we need to under root it and we are going to subtract 1 out of it. This is 0.36. 1.15 into 1.067 is equals to 1.23 under root equals to 1.36. We subtract 1 out of it. This gives us 0.36. Multiply it with 100. This is going to give me 35 point. which is being wrongly calculated. Let me just try this one more time. Okay, my bad. 10.77. So 10.77 is the holding period return. The 10.77 is the holding period return for time weighted return. So 10.77 is the holding period time weighted return. 10.77% and 9.39%. So same figures. When we use the money weighted rate of return, the numbers were 9.39. Then the same numbers when we use the time weighted rate of return, the numbers were different. The rate was time weighted. When we calculated time weighted rate of return, the numbers were different. So cash flows actually have a huge impact when we are using cash flows. When we are using the time and the cash flows, the calculations are very sensitive to time and the cash flows. Okay, I hope this much is you have understood how to use time weighted rate of return, time weighted rate of return. So one more example we have here. So let's do this also quickly so that we uh, test our concepts. So investors purchase the stock for $100 at time zero. At the start of year one, T1, the investor buys another share for 120, and at year two, the investor sells both of these shares for 130. Both year one and two, the stock paid $2 dividend. What is the annual time weighted rate of return for this investment? So the beginning value is $100. There was a dividend of $2. Yes, dividend of $2, and the ending value will be 120. So now we are going to calculate. Understand, whensoever we are talking about time weighted return, we will calculate using holding period returns. So we need to calculate holding period return for every investment. So starting 100, dividend paid 2, ending value is 120. Now we have two stocks. This is where you actually have to pay attention. Now we have two stocks. We have bought in one more stock. So now 120 means the beginning value is 120 into 2, which is 240. Now there is dividend of $2 per stock, $4 of dividend, and the ending value is 130 into 2, means 260. If I When I calculate the holding period return, our stock has moved from 100 to 120. This means the holding period return is 120 plus 2 upon 100, and we subtract 1. So this will give me 122 divided by 100 minus 1. 22 divided by 100, it's 22%. Here in this situation, uh, 260 plus 4 upon 240. Then we subtract 1 out of this whole equation. 264 divided in 240 minus 1. Let me just quickly calculate it for you. So 260, we subtract 240 out of it, and we divide it again by 240. This is going to give me an holding period return of approximately 10%. 264 divided by 240 is going to give me an holding period return of approximately 10%. Here the holding period return is 10% and here the holding period return is 22%. I hope you understood how I calculate this thing. 264 minus 240 divided by 240. This is going to be 24 divided by 240 and this is 10%. Here 122 minus 100 by this is going to be 22 divided by 100 and this is going to be 22%. So holding period return for first year is 22 and the holding period return for second year is 10%. The holding period return for first year is 22%. Holding period return for first year, second year is 10%. Now we are going to calculate this using our geometric mean. So geometric mean means 1 plus 0.22, 1 plus 0.10. This actually I have converted into percentage. And we underroot it. We subtract 1 out of it. Let me share my screen. Now again, we are going back to the calculator so that we understand the functioning, how to use the calculator for these calculations. So 1.22, we multiply it with 1.1. This is going to give me 1.34. So 1.34 now to the power of zero point 0.5. It's going to give me 1.16. Now I subtract 1 out of it. This is going to be 1.6. Now 100 multiply with 100 to convert into percentage. 15.84. 15.84 is the percentage. The holding period return 15.84% is the time weighted rate of return. This does looks confusing at first, but once you start applying or you need to practice a few questions and you will get clarity of what does holding period return means. Uh, the time weighted, the difference between the time weighted and the money weighted rate of return. So yes, it's little tricky when we talk about holding the money weighted and the time weighted rate of return. So we will be doing few more questions. Don't worry about it. We will do some more questions. I have some questions here also, somewhat around nine questions from 9 practice questions, and then we will be working on the curriculum questions also. We'll be discussing those questions also. So I will see you in the next session. Uh, that's all for now. So we'll start with key points where we need to pay attention when we talk about time weighted rate of return. All right, then. Thank you. Thank you for attending this session.